It has not been a good year for the credibility of police officers across this country. Their decision-making has been questioned often and openly, from Ferguson, Missouri to Waller, Texas. In light of the increased public scrutiny, WTOC News went to the Georgia Public Safety Training Center to get a sense of an officer's perspective in the heat of the moment. It started in Ferguson, Missouri, where the actions of police officers triggered violence in the streets. It came to Augusta Avenue in Savannah, when residents questioned the shooting of a fugitive arrested for outstanding warrants.
Get out of the car! I will light you up! Get out!
Just this month, the actions of police officers in Waller, Texas, and the University of Cincinnati drew even more attention to police tactics.
We want to make the right decision. We don't want to shoot people that we don't want to use any force that's not necessary. Same scenario.
Major Harlan Prevost of the Georgia State Patrol and Metro Police Training Director Gary Taylor are responsible for making sure officers have the foundation they need to make the best decisions in the field.
Hello? Please? Sir?
To do that, they put officers in real-life scenarios to test their powers of observation and decision-making.
Ma'am, sir. Sir?
In this situation, WTOC's Tim Williams answers a call to an area that's had several armed robberies. That's all Tim knows.
Stop! Police, stop! Stop! Sir, stop! Stop! Sir, let me see your hands. Sir? Sir?
In spite of being ready, weapon aimed and steady, the suspect shot Tim first, an outcome that speaks to one of the principal dilemmas an officer faces.
How long does it take for our brain to process the threat and react to that threat?
Too long, I would assume, in the public state of mind, but for a trained officer, a little better.
If he's got a gun behind here, it takes him 0.58 seconds. That's just over a half a second. 0.58 seconds, pull that gun, shoot, and turn around and run. It takes us almost a second and a half to process that and react to it.
Yeah.
For our mind to perceive, okay, there's a deadly threat, now let me react.
Hold it right there, sir. I'm a police officer. On this call, I'm responding to a burglar alarm in a dark warehouse. Both hands. Put your hands above your head. There's an alarm going. What's clear in the video, but not clear in what I saw, was that the suspect had pulled out a staple gun from behind the box. In hindsight, my actions might have been wrong, but the law on such actions is not based on hindsight.
Because your perception is the only perception that matters to the United States Supreme Court.
Right. Right.
What did you perceive to be the threat or not to be the threat? It's easy to second guess, and hindsight, is always 20/20.
How easy is it to define the guidelines that every police officer must follow before using deadly force? Is it as simple as it was in the 60s?
It's as simple as you can define reasonableness.
Okay, so reasonable is the key.
Reasonableness is the key, and it's hard to define.
The controlling legal principle is the Supreme Court's decision in Graham versus Connor, which leans heavily on the perceived threat to an officer.
We'll never apologize for our survival skills that we teach in the police academy. Because if you look back from the 70s to now, the number of officers being killed is less and less. And we attribute that to officer survival skills. And we'll never apologize for teaching officer survival skills.
Get your hand out of your pocket. Both hands out of your pocket. Both hands out of
Hesitation or tentative decision-making can get you killed. Major Prevost cites the example of South Carolina trooper Mark Coates.
You know why he was killed?
No.
He has hands in his pocket just like this, and when Mark Coates went to search him, he quickly pulled out a gun and shot the trooper from having his hands in his pocket. That's where he had his gun.
Mm-hmm.
Get that light out of my eyes, man.
Many of the scenarios involve people screaming obscenities at the top of their lungs.
That's what they're going to face on the street.
Yeah.
So we'll try to make it as realistic as possible.
If such language affects decision-making, it's better that it be discovered at the training center than on the street. In spite of intense public scrutiny of the actions of the police officer, Taylor says that use of force is in fact a rare phenomenon.
2008 nationwide, there was 40 million contacts between law enforcement and the community, okay? Think about that now, 40 million instances of contact between law enforcement personnel and members of the community. During those 40 million contacts during 2008, 776,000 of those contacts, some type of force was used or threatened to be used. That's comes out to what, 1.9%. The focus for us now is de-escalating these situations.
Right. Of the hundreds of situations played out for police training, many do not involve the use of a weapon. That, say Taylor and Prevost, is because the first role of police is not force, and their best tool is not a pistol.
The most effective tool that they possess is their ability to speak and their ability to communicate and their ability to listen.
We want to thank the folks at Metro Police and the Georgia Training Center, and Julian Miller, who, by the way, just retired from the police department. He's the one who gave us access to tell this story.
Pale moon shining on the fields below.
Up next, the characters who fueled midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil have yet another incarnation that's just ahead.